Next up, as we continue to discuss the day's theme of developing our work as mission information workers, Michael Jafarian is going to provide us with further insight into more recent historical development of our mission information work. Michael and his wife, Donna, were missionaries for 33 years with World Venture. For 6 years, he was the executive director of the Singapore Center for Global Mission. Most of his career has been in global mission research. He served as associate editor of the World Christian Encyclopedia and senior research associate with Operation World. And beyond those, he has written and published more than 180 articles and book contributions. In 2012, he moved back to his hometown in Oregon on the west coast of the USA, where he and his wife now live. Since 2017, he's been working as a freelance consultant and researcher for nonprofit organizations and charities. And many of his clients, but not all, have been mission organizations. Like several other leading members of our mission research community, Michael was profiled in the Community of Mission Information Workers Bulletin, the CMIW Bulletin, in the April 2016 edition. And I'll place a link to the CMIW Bulletin. Oh, we've already got a link to the CMIW Bulletin. Thank you, Laura. I think you did that earlier, so I won't drop it again. Michael has titled his presentation, How One Man Began Many of Our Global Lists, David Barrett and the World Christian Encyclopedia. Michael, welcome.
Yes, thank you. And good morning. At least it's morning for me, but so for the Great International Mission Convention in Edinburgh of 1910, there was terrific global mission research conducted, and they produced a large atlas of the status of Christianity and mission around the world. I don't have that atlas, but this was a follow-on publication from 1925, World Missionary Atlas, that gave detailed statistics on the countries of the world, denominations. It included maps that showed every mission station. That's how mission was thought of then. So this was a huge piece of research, and the detail is amazing. I just opened to a page that shows in India the number of Christian kindergartens, elementary schools, middle schools, industrial schools, teacher training schools, and so on. That's the education system section. And then medical work, and then evangelistic and church planting work. So that line of research slowed down during the time of the Second World War, but it was followed by a book that looked like this, much smaller, called World Christian Handbook. And it gave a summary of some key statistics on the status of Christian denominations and mission efforts. There were at least 6 editions, 1949, 1952, 1957. I have in my hand the 1962 edition, and there was a 1968 edition. And it gave stats on every Christian denomination, including number of the places of worship, the number of communicants or full members, the total Christian community, and then Christian workers. How many were ordained? How many are laymen? How many women for denominations all around the world? So let me tell you about David Barrett and where he enters the story. He was English and was a student at Cambridge University, a very bright student. An American evangelist came to the campus named Donald Gray Barnhouse. These bright students initially mocked him, but then heard the message of the gospel in a way that touched their hearts. And David Barrett was among many who were converted. He finished his education and became an aeronautics engineer. He was also a test pilot. In the British system, you designed the planes and flew them. So that helped ensure the integrity of the design. His supervisor came to him one day with a new project. And David Barrett said, "This is the rocket to carry the British nuclear bomb, isn't it?" His supervisor said, "Well, yes, it is." And David, as a Christian pacifist, refused. So one thing led to another, and he ended up leaving that vocation and training as a Anglican priest, and then as a missionary. So when he joined the Church Missionary Society and went as a missionary to Kenya, his supervisor told him, "Leave science behind." But the scientific way of thinking was so knit into who he was that he began looking around and studying things and enumerating things. And that led to the publication of this book in 1968 called Schism and Renewal in Africa, an analysis of 6,000 contemporary religious movements, published by Oxford University Press in 1968. This also was his doctoral dissertation when he earned a PhD with honors in Columbia University of New York City. So Christian missions and Christian workers around Africa were aware of these independent African movements. But this was the first time that someone enumerated the picture. And in this, he traveled all over the continent, every country, to list every single African independent church. And it included pictures to illustrate what he was doing. For example, here is an apostle, preacher, evangelist of the African Apostolic Church of Yohane Maranke in Rhodesia, proclaiming the gospel and wearing the distinctive dress of that African indigenous church. So the title is very telling, Schism and Renewal. To that point, most of the denominations had seen these independent movements only as schism. And he pointed out how this also was a point of renewal. So he did that and then went on from there. This was published in 1973, the Kenya Church's Handbook, which is not a small book. I mean, this is just a report on the status of Christianity in Kenya, but the amount of detail that he went into is stunning. And he was part of a research team. Some essays were contributed by others, but it also included maps. In the back, there are these fold-out maps attached to the back cover of the book. And this is a map that shows the location of every mission station in the country of Kenya by great detail. You can imagine the amount of work that went into compiling this. So those who had been carrying on the work of the World Christian Handbook wanted to do a new edition. And because of his work in Africa, David Barrett had attracted their attention as someone competent to do this. So he was asked to do the next edition of the World Christian Handbook. And he said, "I'll do it but I want to do it in a more comprehensive way than it's ever been done before. He thought the project would take him 2 years. It required 12. And the result was the first edition of the World Christian Encyclopedia. This is the American cover, and this is the British cover. True collectors have both. So the heart of it is an article on every country in the world, and it starts with a table of the religious breakdown in the world. How many Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, and so on, with dates from the year 1900 to mid 1980, with a projection to the year 2000. Then a text article that includes pictures. This is the Mexico article I'm looking at here. And then the bibliography, and then the table of denominations for every country in the world. And they're listed just alphabetically with statistics on every denomination. The publication of this book was such an advance in the global understanding of the demographics of religion that Time magazine published a full 2-page spread on its findings. Before this publication, no one was aware of the great extent of Islam, certainly not to this detail. Before this publication, no one was aware how the church had so vigorously survived and thrived in the Soviet Union, and so on. Let me give you one example of how this was used. Operation Mobilization, a very zealous mission organization, they had people get a hold of this book and start praying through it. And they were shocked to discover how many Muslims there were in the world and how little Christian witness there was to the Muslims. That led to the launching of all of OM's ministry to the Muslim world. In particular, they pioneered the work in Turkey that had a great impact. So time went on, and after a while, Oxford University Press said, David, people are still buying this thing. We need an update. When he finished this project, he said, I will never attempt this again. Somebody else can do the next one. But in fact, the Lord began to bring a team together that gave him the confidence to move forward. And that's, I joined the team in 1992. So the entire project was not only updated, this is the second edition, it was expanded. The second edition is actually 3 volumes. Although the third volume, the team presented all 3 volumes to Oxford University Press. And they said, these 2 volumes are of interest to the academic world and the social science world and so on and so forth. The third volume is of less interest to us because this is all concentrated on factors related to the Christian world mission. The reason it expanded to 3 volumes, there were the country articles as before, but these volumes now included extensive detailed tables of information on the status of Christianity, evangelization, and religion in every city of the world, in every language of the world, in every people group of the world, and so on. And this also received extensive reviews. The work of this team has continued on. David Barrett is now in heaven, but his colleague, Todd Johnson, has carried on the work. It moved on to Boston, where it was given a place at the Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, and now is the Center for the Study of Global Christianity. So they produced in 2009 the Atlas of Global Christianity, and then in 2020 the third edition of the World Christian Encyclopedia. All of the prior databases still exist, but this time it went back to a one-volume work centered on the country articles. And the work continues. So anyhow, let me say I'm delighted to see a number of dear friends joining in the group here, particularly George Guma from Uganda. It's a delight to see you here. Anyhow, that's my report. Blessings on you.
Thank you, Michael. You've had a workout just passing books by the camera there for the morning. That was fascinating to see how that grew as the Lord directed David Barrett. Fun to have that glimpse into recent history and to be inspired by the level of detail and extensiveness and commitment over time. Thank you.